And welcome back once again to Ask Coach Fillnow alongside Kelly Fillnow. I'm Dave Erickson. Today's question comes from Twitter using the hashtag Ask Coach Fillnow. This is from TJ, and he writes to Kelly, how do you bounce back from a bad race?
Thanks so much, TJ, for the question. And that's a great question because so often when we have that big A race, we're focused and we put in a ton of time, and it's tough to swallow when things don't go according to plan. But what I like to do if I do have a bad race is really analyze what went wrong and learn from that experience, because so often when things are smooth sailing and we have that perfect race, we don't really analyze. We just, move on to the next thing and without focusing on what we did right in that training block. So when things go wrong, that's really when we can learn so much. And when we do learn, that's when we grow as an athlete through those obstacles and trials. So what I highly recommend is analyzing and then writing things down, doing a race report, writing in a journal and saying, okay, what did I do nutritionally that race week? What did I do race day? Was there any issue there with my taper? What did that training block look like? Was I overly fatigued? Did I have too much intensity? Or did I just have plain old bad luck? And so just learn and grow. And then, but the hard thing is if it's the last race of the season and we end on a bad note, it can be months and months or even almost a year into our next big A race. So what do you do when that happens? Well, what I think is important is to set new goals and have a new focus. So maybe it's something like I want to be able to do 20 straight pull-ups or learn how to mountain bike, and set other goals for yourself so that you can get remotivated again. And then that experience from your last race, you can use it to serve as motivation when you start training for that next race, and it just gives you good fuel for the fire.
I love the idea of looking over your data to see what may have happened to cause that. But on the opposite side of this is that when you have a great race, you want to duplicate that, but you can't always duplicate a good race, and you can't always duplicate a bad race. You never know it. There's so many variables involved.
Absolutely. There's so many variables, and a lot of them, a lot of the variables are uncontrollable. So I think if we do a better job of analyzing every race and learning from not only the bad races but the good races too, will set us up for even more success down the road too. But also being aware that you might have had a bad race because of things that are not under your control. Like say you got a flat tire on the bike, but then maybe mentally you gave up once that obstacle happened. So how can you overcome obstacles in the future and continue to make forward progress instead of just being mentally defeated? So there's always something you can do and figure a way around that roadblock.
Yeah, I think when TJ said, bounce back from a bad race, it's kind of a blanket statement. There's a lot of positives that happen within a race. Maybe you do have a flat, but you had a good mental game and you got back into it and recovered well and had a great run. So there's some positive you can pull from it.
Absolutely. And trying to find a positive, whether or not it was in your mental attitude throughout the day, even if it was a bad race. Or another thing I like to do is set A goals, B goals, and C goals too. So say your goal was to make Kona and you didn't make Kona, but maybe, two former pros are in your age group and that's something you can't control and they both took the Kona spots. There's a lot of things but instead of just having that specific goal, I want to make Kona. Well, maybe have goals of focusing on the process. For instance, on my swim, I want to focus on a good catch. On my bike, I want to keep my cadence at 90. On my run, I want to make sure I'm not crossing over my arm and have more process-oriented goals too. And then when you're analyzing, you can think back and say, okay, how were those process goals? Did I reach them? And you can glean more positive feedback too. When you're not just focusing on that performance. From a time standpoint, because at the end of the day, I think if you have the mindset that you're not defined by a race time and your identity is not in a specific placement or number, and if you have that mindset too, it just keeps everything in perspective when you do have an off day, because it's really not about that time, but it's what you're learning through the process.
Let's go one step deeper here, Kelly. When you're on the start line on the beach or you're in the open water getting ready for the gun to go off, are you breaking it up mentally into, okay, here's the swim section, or I'm going to go the first half of this race at this strategy, and then you regroup in transition one for the bike? How's it for you mentally when you're at a race?
Yeah, that's a good question. I like to compartmentalize the day and just focus on keeping everything simplicity throughout the day. So when I'm on the swim, I'm really just focusing on like that stroke at a time and not getting ahead of myself. And on the bike, I'm just focusing in that moment too. And that helps, when you are overcoming a bad period during the race, like if you're not focused on that present moment, it can be much easier to let those obstacles get in the way for the rest of the day. But if you're just focused on the present, then that is, that helps that mindset. So I like to also just, envision certain training routes that I'm doing when I'm on the bike and say, okay, I only have, this ride that I've done a million times, or on the run, break it into 5Ks and focus on all I have to do is that 5K, my favorite trail that I've done, umpteen times. And then that just helps, my mindset too.
Do you or have you in the past maybe written notes on your bike or on your hand to remind you of, okay, on the bike, this is my goal of so many watts, or I'm hoping to hit at a half iron distance by halfway point, I want to be here, or anything like that, or even during the run? What do you do anything like that?
I actually do, yes. And normally it's not like hitting specific watts, but it's more things for my mind. A lot of times I write on my hand, relentlessly positive. One of my teammates at Duke was killed cycling. And so she would always say, be relentlessly positive. And so I have a focus on that, like staying positive no matter what. And so, I'll write that on my wrist. And then when I'm running, I'll look at it if I'm in a tough spot and be like, oh, okay, just she would give anything for just one more race, and so that kind of changes my mindset. So I think it's important to, maybe have a quote on your bike that will help you, when you're in that tough patch too. And not just, those specific, like, okay, remember to eat or, do X amount of watts, but just have something to help that mind.
A mantra. A friend of ours and a teammate, Roger Thompson, would tell me in some of my last races, bike your bike so you can run your run. Bike your bike so you can run your run. And
exactly.
That kept me in the moment of, okay, focus on right now, what you can control. Right. Bike the bike, and then you can run your run. Don't think ahead, think of in the moment.
Absolutely. And that's great too, because it's nice and simple that you can reiterate the entire bike if you want, because you don't want your mind focusing on a million different things. But if it's, you're just saying bike your bike so you can run your run over and over again, that's a good place for your mind to be.
TJ, great question. Thanks very much. If you have a question for Kelly, use the hashtag AskCoachPhilNow on Twitter, Facebook, or YouTube. Kelly, we'll see you next time. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye.